The morning light crept reluctantly over the serrated skyline of downtown Chicago, softening the steel and glass towers that jutted skyward like ambitions long since calcified into stone. Below, the arteries of the city pulsed to life, trains rattling over rusted tracks, yellow cabs threading between impatient commuters, and pedestrians wrapped in the early chill of a wind-lashed spring morning. Among them, Marcelline Sherell walked like a woman untouched by the static of the world around her. Her heels clicked with steady precision against the concrete, a rhythmic counterpoint to the dissonant symphony of urban bustle. She wore a tailored navy suit that kissed her frame with effortless elegance. Beneath the sharp lapels, a silk blouse the color of oyster shells shimmered faintly with each stride. In her left hand, manicured nails painted a muted wine. She cradled a disposable coffee cup, the steam curling like a secret around her slender fingers. On her right wrist, a slim platinum watch glinted under the awakening sky. Marceline's face, framed by glossy black curls pinned meticulously at the nape of her neck, carried a softness that belied the cutting edge of her professional acumen. Her smile, practiced but seemingly spontaneous, tilted gently at the corners whenever she crossed paths with a familiar face. And there were many colleagues, clients, baristas, even a parking attendant near the Wabash entrance. Each greeted her with an easy familiarity, as though basking for a moment in the glow of her grace granted them something intangible but precious. "Morning, Miss Sherell," called Devon, the lanky security guard posted at her firm's glass-fronted lobby. Marceline's smile arrived instantly, sculpted and flawless. "Good morning, Devon. How's the new baby sleeping?" Her voice lilted, velvet smooth with a cadence that suggested genuine interest. Devon's shoulders relaxed. "Not great, but it's worth it." She smiled for the first time yesterday. "That's wonderful," Marceline replied warmly. "Hang in there, you're doing great." As she swiped her badge and stepped into the cool sanctuary of the elevator, her smile slowly receded, her jaw clenching almost imperceptibly before she caught her own reflection in the polished steel doors. Instinctively, she smoothed her features, tilting her chin by a degree to soften the strain gathered between her brows. It would not do, not now, not today, not ever, to let the cracks show. When the elevator doors slid open on the 27th floor, the atmosphere was already charged. Colleagues hurried from glass-walled conference rooms, their clipped footsteps and staccato conversations echoing off marble floors and minimalist office decor. This was where Chicago's most prestigious marketing strategies were born, sleek, calculated, commanding. Marceline stepped into her office, a pristine expanse of Scandinavian wood, matte black accents, and framed abstract art, and exhaled slowly through her nose. For a brief second, her fingers hovered near her temples before she rolled her shoulders and sank into her leather chair. Her assistant, a wiry young woman named Sonia, tapped lightly on the doorframe. "Morning, Mars. The Portman pitch is in 30. They're all here early. You want me to push coffee to the boardroom?" "Yes, thank you," Marceline said crisply, reaching for the glossy binder on her desk. "And Sonia, could you grab an extra copy of last week's analytics breakdown? Slide 5 needs reinforcement." Sonia gave a thumbs up and vanished. Left alone, Marceline's hands stilled on the binder. Her nails, perfectly shaped ovals lacquered in deep garnet, pressed into the cardstock, leaving faint indentations. She inhaled deeply. The air, laced faintly with lavender from the reed diffuser across the room, did little to loosen the knot lodged under her breastbone. Don't falter. Don't sink. Don't stop. They expect brilliance. You deliver brilliance. That's who you are. When she entered the conference room moments later, her gait was poised and unhurried. A dozen expectant faces turned toward her, their voices softening as she laid her materials on the central oak table. Her team, polished, hungry, sharp, looked to her not just for strategy but for composure, for certainty wrapped in that signature Sherell charisma. The meeting unfolded seamlessly. Marceline wove data, storytelling, and market trends into a persuasive tapestry, her voice measured yet dynamic. Her eyes sparkled when appropriate, Her lips curved in encouragement as junior associates pitched auxiliary ideas, and not once did her posture slacken. And yet, behind her ribcage, a tremor unfurled. It was subtle at first, an almost imperceptible quiver deep in her chest that seemed to vibrate outward to the very marrow of her bones. Her left hand, hidden below the lip of the table, curled reflexively into her palm, her nails digging crescents into soft flesh. Her throat tightened, dry as parchment despite the water glass untouched at her elbow. Still, her face remained the portrait of calm engagement. As the meeting adjourned, accolades floated through the air like confetti. Incredible as always, Mars. You make it look easy. You're a machine. Each phrase brushed past her consciousness like moth wings, insubstantial, meaningless, ephemeral. The day blurred into fragments after that. A flurry of client calls, follow-up emails typed with mechanical efficiency, back-to-back brainstorm sessions peppered with Marcelline's incisive insights. Her colleagues' admiration washed over her, empty as ocean foam. By evening, the city outside glowed in amber hues as the sun sank toward Lake Michigan. Marcelline transitioned effortlessly into her second skin, socialite. She moved through the trendy rooftop lounge with her usual understated elegance, sipping white wine as laughter lilted around her. Friends and acquaintances clustered near the glass balustrades, their conversations effervescent with gossip, career talk, and weekend plans. Jonas arrived, tall, composed, a study in gentle strength with warm hazel eyes that crinkled at the edges when he smiled. Marcelline's breath caught subtly when his hand found the small of her back, grounding her momentarily. "You've conquered the world again today," he murmured, brushing a kiss to her temple. "Hardly," she replied, resting her cheek against his shoulder for a fleeting second. "Just another day." But her eyelids fluttered closed longer than necessary, as if in that brief touch, she could siphon enough steadiness to make it to tomorrow. Later still, at home, Jonas unpacked their takeout with easy chatter about hospital rounds and a funny mishap with one of his young patients. Marcelline listened, responding with soft laughter at all the right moments. They dined cross-legged on the couch, and when Jonas laid his head in her lap, she stroked his hair absently, her expression tender yet distant. By the time midnight curled its long fingers around the edges of their apartment, Jonas had drifted into deep sleep beside her. His breathing, even and warm, brushed against her shoulder as she sat propped against the headboard. She gazed out their bedroom window. Chicago shimmered below like a constellation spilled across black velvet. Her reflection ghosted against the glass, flawless, composed, inscrutable. And then, her right hand, resting on the duvet, trembled. It was a small tremor, but steady now, like the faint hum of a distant engine that never fully shuts off. Marcelline stared at it as though it belonged to someone else. Her lips parted, a sharp inhale tightening her chest. She pressed her hand flat against her thigh to still it, her knuckles blanching white. In the shadowed hush of their apartment, the only sound was the rhythmic, oblivious breathing of the man who loved her, and who had no idea how carefully she had choreographed every moment of her life to keep from shattering into pieces too small to gather. She turned her head slowly toward the dresser mirror across the room. In its darkened surface, her face stared back, eyes shadowed, jaw locked tight, smile long since dissolved. For several minutes, she did nothing, did not blink, did not move. Then, methodically, deliberately, Marcelline slipped from the bed, padded into the ensuite bathroom, and flipped on the dim vanity light. The bulbs flickered once before studying. She leaned forward, her palms braced on cool marble, and studied herself. Up close, her foundation had worn thin. Faint purple shadows bloomed beneath her lower lashes. A single line, deeper than she remembered, carved itself between her brows. She dabbed concealer gently under each eye, smoothed serum into her skin, brushed a careful layer of balm over her lips. Piece by piece, she restored the mask. When she finally returned to bed, she lay on her back staring at the ceiling for a long time. By dawn, her smile would be in place again. The world would receive Marcelline Sherell as they always had, radiant, unflappable, whole. Even if she herself no longer recognized the woman behind the glass. The numbers on the digital clock shifted in silent defiance of sleep. 3:17 a.m. Marcelline lay supine on the mattress, sheets tangled loosely around her waist, one arm draped limply over her forehead. The faint glow of city lights slipped through the thin curtains, dappling the ceiling in muted amber ripples, a restless reflection of the streets still murmuring 5 floors below. Her eyes were open, clear, unblinking. Jonas's breathing was steady beside her, his broad back turned in contented repose. His presence, once a balm, now hovered like distant white noise. Marcelline's gaze didn't move toward him. Instead, it remained fixed on the undulating shadows overhead, her pupils dilated against the dark. Sleep had not visited her bed willingly for months. Her heart beat a slow, weighty rhythm, each thud echoing faintly against the hollow spaces carved deep within her chest. It was not a racing, frantic tempo, not the sharp, acute panic she had sometimes feared would betray her facade in public. No, this was heavier, a dull, persistent gravity that seemed to drag her inward, deeper, quieter. She exhaled slowly, her breath shallow and unsatisfying. The air felt thick, almost syrupy, resisting her lungs' attempts to expand fully. At 3:56 a.m., she finally sat up. Her movements were precise and noiseless, the calculated grace of someone long practiced at slipping from bed without disturbing a partner's slumber. Bare feet pressed against the cool hardwood as she rose, the hem of her silk camisole fluttering against her thighs. In the dim wash of the bathroom's nightlight, Marcelline studied herself again. The reflection was grainy, soft-edged. It offered mercy in low resolution. A fine sheen of sweat clung to her collarbones despite the apartment's chill. Her curls, normally pinned neatly into a polished chignon, tumbled loose and wild about her shoulders. She caught sight of her own lips, parted ever so slightly, as though mid-confession, yet soundless. Her fingertips rose slowly to press against the hollow of her throat. She didn't recognize the shape of her own vulnerability anymore. Years of curated expression had left her face pliant, compliant. Smiles summoned on command. Brows furrowed with sympathetic concern at colleagues' laments. Eyes sparkled convincingly at cocktail parties and client galas. But here, under low light, bare and stripped, her features wavered, undefined and foreign. The floorboards creaked faintly as she padded into the kitchen. The clock on the microwave blinked 4:03 a.m. in steady neon green. Instinctively, Marcelline reached for her planner on the counter, a sleek, leather-bound tome embossed with her initials. She flipped through pages swiftly, her fingers skimming across penciled-in meetings, deadlines, networking luncheons. Her calendar bloomed with activity, dense, methodical, relentless. She had always derived stability from structure. But tonight, no. This morning, the columns of tasks and to-dos blurred into meaningless gray streaks under her gaze. Her throat constricted. From a drawer, she withdrew a thin, spiral-bound notebook, one rarely touched anymore. The cover, once crisp, was softened from years of handling. On the first page, in neat, looping script, she had once scrawled, "Thoughts I don't say aloud." She turned to an empty page and held the pen poised over it. Her hand trembled. It was subtle, a fine, near-invisible shiver that traced from her wrist to her fingertips, as though her body recoiled instinctively from honesty even in private. After several long minutes, she set the pen down untouched. The alarm blared 5:30 a.m. sharp. Jonas stirred beside her, mumbling softly as his arms stretched into empty space. His eyes cracked open, bleary but fond, and caught sight of her silhouette perched on the edge of the bed, upright, spine straight, motionless. "Morning already?" he rasped, voice gravelly with sleep. Marcelline turned her head slightly over her shoulder. Her expression softened immediately, or rather, her practiced muscles arranged themselves into approximation. "Just about," she replied, her voice warm with faux sleepiness. I couldn't fall back asleep, so I got up early. Jonas smiled lazily, unbothered, and buried his face back into the pillow. Marcelline rose, moving with fluid precision into the bathroom. The vanity lights hummed softly as she flicked them on. Their sterile glow erased shadows, revealing the fine fissures sleep deprivation had etched across her features. Her movements were meticulous. Cleansing balm massaged into skin. Cool water splashed thrice. Toner dabbed with careful cotton swipes. Moisturizer tapped gently under each eye. Concealer, precise and feathered. Highlighter along cheekbones, not too bright, just luminous enough to mimic vitality. Her expression as she worked was vacant, mechanical. A surgeon suturing invisible wounds. By 6:15 a.m., she stood before her open wardrobe. Silk blouses hung in chromatic order. Blazers lined with satin shimmered faintly. Pencil skirts and tailored trousers, all precisely pressed, formed clean columns. Her fingers hovered, then selected a powder blue blouse and charcoal slacks, hues calculated to convey calm authority. Button by button, cufflink by cufflink, she assembled herself anew. By the time Jonas shuffled sleepily into the kitchen, she was seated at the breakfast bar, scrolling her phone with a mug of tea in hand. "You're glowing this morning," he said, pressing a kiss to her crown before starting the coffee maker. "Early meetings?" "Just getting a head start," she murmured, tapping her calendar app. Her smile, wide, easy, unforced to the casual eye, masked the faint ache looming behind her sternum. Jonas poured himself coffee, oblivious to the thin sheen of sweat beginning to gather under the fabric of her blouse. At 7:45 a.m., she stood before her building's mirrored elevator once more. Her reflection gazed back at her, crisp, luminous, invulnerable. But for the briefest flicker, no more than a heartbeat, her lower eyelids twitched and her lips pressed into a bloodless line. The tremor had returned. Her right hand, hidden in the pocket of her slacks, clenched slowly into a fist. The glass-paneled cafe breathed soft jazz and warm cinnamon. Morning sunlight filtered through tall windows, gilding every polished wooden surface in gold. Brunch hour at Juniper and Company always carried an easy hum. Muted conversations, the clink of cutlery, steam rising from artisan coffees. Marcelline had chosen this spot deliberately, refined yet unpretentious, with just enough bustle to mask silence if it fell between words. She sat at a corner table set for two, spine poised perfectly upright, long fingers curled around the delicate porcelain handle of a lavender Earl Grey. Her powder blue blouse shimmered subtly in the light. The charcoal slacks hugged her silhouette in sleek, deliberate lines. Not a strand of hair strayed from the soft, coiled bun at the nape of her neck. Her phone rested screen down beside the saucer, her planner aligned parallel to the edge of the table, symmetry soothing her nerves. Across from her, Priya swept in with the quiet chaos of a woman perpetually 5 minutes late, but charming enough to make tardiness forgivable. "Oh, God, I'm sorry," Priya breathed, unspooling a deep burgundy scarf from around her neck as she slid into the seat opposite. Her dark curls bounced freely. Gold hoops caught the light as she tucked a stray lock behind one ear. Traffic was murder on DeSalle. "You look perfect as usual. Do you ever wrinkle?" Marcelline's smile appeared, smooth and effortless. "You're fine. I just got here." Her voice was honeyed, laced with practiced reassurance. "And wrinkle? Not allowed in my profession, remember?" Priya's laugh was warm, genuine, the kind that lilted up from the chest and softened the air around it. She flagged the waiter and ordered a cappuccino and avocado toast, then rested her elbows on the table, chin cupped in her palm. "How are you, though?" Her gaze sharpened, threading curiosity with concern. "You've been quiet lately, even for you." For a moment, Marcelline's breath caught. Subtle, imperceptible to anyone but herself. The rules of engagement spun swiftly through her mind. Deflect, divert, distract, smile. "I've been buried under the Kessler merger," she replied, voice breezy but not dismissive. "You know how year-end reviews pile up. My inbox has turned carnivorous." Priya's eyes narrowed fractionally, an almost imperceptible tilt of her head. She had known Marcelline for 12 years, since their overlapping internships at Renford and Hale, two ambitious young women elbowing space for themselves in a male-dominated industry. If anyone could sense hairline fractures behind Marcelline's polish, it was her. Still, Priya let it slide for the moment. Her cappuccino arrived, frothy and dusted with cocoa. Workaholic. One day, they're going to name a corner office after you. Priya teased lightly. Her rings clinked against the cup as she took a sip, then softened her tone. Seriously though, I hope you're not drowning. You're always the one telling me burnout isn't a badge of honor. Marcelline's smile deepened, almost wistful. I promise I'm managing. You know me, spreadsheets soothe the soul. The conversation drifted, as it always did. Safe territory. Work updates, mutual colleagues' latest dramas, Priya's ongoing attempt to coax her boyfriend into adopting a rescue dog. Marcelline nodded and responded on cue, knowing precisely when to interject empathy, when to laugh, when to press for details. But beneath the choreography, her pulse throbbed steadily in her throat. Each word required calibration. Each expression demanded vigilance. It wasn't that she distrusted Priya, far from it. Priya's loyalty was unwavering, her insight sharp without cruelty. But that was precisely why Marcelline could not let slip even a thread of her unraveling. If Priya saw too much, she'd tug, gentle and persistent, until the entire tapestry crumbled in her hands. And Marcelline could not afford to break. Not here, not now. A sharp clang echoed from the kitchen, a dropped tray, and for an instant, Marcelline's shoulders tensed visibly. Her nails bit into the porcelain rim of her teacup. Priya's gaze flicked toward her, swift and assessing. You all right? She asked quietly, her brow knitting. Marcelline released the cup slowly, smoothing her hands in her lap. Just startled, she murmured. Didn't sleep well last night. Half-truth. Palatable. Priya hesitated, her lips parting as though weighing whether to push further. Her eyes, dark, intelligent, lingered on Marcelline's face longer than comfort allowed. Finally, she settled back, exhaling slowly. You tell me if it was more than that, right? Her voice was soft, devoid of accusation. It was not a demand but an invitation, one Marcelline felt reverberate in her chest like a distant bell. The temptation nearly hollowed her out. To confess. To exhale all of it. The sleeplessness, the nausea that coiled through her gut each morning, the mounting sense of dissociation that left her staring blankly at spreadsheets and forgetting conversations seconds after they ended. To whisper that the smile she wore was grafted on so tightly it bruised the corners of her soul. But instead, she tilted her head, the curve of her lips gentle, her eyes luminous. Of course I would.
Lie.
Easy and elegant. Priya studied her for another beat, then nodded faintly, seeming to accept the answer even as her fingers drummed thoughtfully against her cup. By the time their food arrived, Priya's avocado toast crowned with crimson radish ribbons, Marcelline's smoked salmon tartine arranged in meticulous spirals, the moment had passed. They ate slowly, conversation loosening as plates emptied. Yet, beneath the table, Marcelline's left hand had curled into a white-knuckled fist atop her thigh. After brunch, they lingered by the door, the air crisp with late autumn chill. People bustled past, scarves wound tight, coffee cups clasped like talismans against the cold. Priya pulled her scarf snugly around her neck, tilting her face up toward the weak, silvered sun. Hey, before you head back to the grind, she turned back, her expression earnest. I know you're good at handling everything yourself, but don't shut me out, okay? I worry about you. The gentleness in her tone nearly undid Marcelline. She swallowed thickly, the back of her throat raw. I know, she managed. Her voice sounded distant in her own ears. I'll call you this week. Promise. Priya extended her pinky with a crooked grin, just like they had when they were interns surviving late nights fueled by vending machine coffee and impossible deadlines. Marcelline's smile quivered, then steadied. She looped her pinky through Priya's, their fingers warm against the chill. Promise. As Priya disappeared into the crowd, Marcelline turned away sharply. Her breath caught against the tight knot coiled under her sternum. Her shoulders squared reflexively, her jaw clenching. She reached into her coat pocket and withdrew her compact mirror. The reflection gazed back, impassive and pristine. Smile intact. No cracks visible. Yet behind her ribcage, something fragile splintered. The glass tower of Renford and Hale Capital loomed sharp against the gray Manhattan sky, a monolith of steel and reflective panels slicing upward through low-hanging clouds. Its polished lobby pulsed with precision and affluence, leather shoes striking marble floors in rhythmic cadence, crisp voices trading market forecasts over gleaming chrome railings, espresso machines hissing in the executive lounge. Marceline's heels tapped steadily across the atrium, the staccato of her steps even and measured. In one hand, she cradled a slim folio of quarterly reports. In the other, her phone buzzed intermittently, muted vibrations alerting her to calendar pings and Slack notifications piling like sediment. Her reflection rippled briefly as she passed the brushed metal elevator doors, pristine, impenetrable, confident. Inside, however, her pulse pressed hot and quick against the hollow of her throat. The elevator door slid open on floor 42, Strategy and M&A. As she stepped into the open-plan office, cool light from panoramic windows spilled across sleek glass desks and ergonomic chairs. The familiar buzz of colleagues immersed in analysis rose and fell like low tide. Smiles and nods greeted her from a few passing associates. Her lips lifted effortlessly in return. Marcelline, a voice called, brisk, clipped, but not unkind. Gregory Phelps, senior partner and her direct superior, strode toward her, his tailored navy suit immaculate, silver cufflinks glinting. His salt and pepper hair was combed with geometric precision, his expression fixed in the neutral efficiency of someone whose day was carved into 15-minute increments. I need you in Conference 3B in 10. Kessler's counsel has countered Clause 17. We'll need to retool our proposal before their legal team convenes at noon. Marceline's smile was immediate and crisp. Of course. I'll be ready. Phelps nodded curtly and pivoted away, already mid-conversation, into his Bluetooth earpiece. She pivoted smoothly toward her glass office, her pace unwavering. Yet the minute she closed the door behind her, her fingers convulsed slightly around the leather folio. The numbers on her spreadsheet, intricate columns of EBITDA projections and acquisition synergies, blurred faintly under her gaze. Her chest felt compressed, as if an iron band wrapped around her ribcage and cinched tighter with every breath. You know these numbers. You know these clauses. You could redraft this in your sleep. Her own inner voice, usually calm and commanding, echoed thinly, fraying at the edges. Her reflection in her monitor, faint, ghost-like, blinked slowly back at her. The same impeccable exterior, flawless makeup, silk blouse unwrinkled, posture immaculate. But her hands trembled. A knock tapped gently against the glass. Hey, Marceline. Oliver Reyes, one of her junior associates, peered in with a tentative smile. He was wiry, with sharp brown eyes and an honest tilt to his brow that made him seem younger than 32. You want me to prep the last draft's red lines? I figured you'd want them in front of you. For 3B. Her lips curved automatically. That'd be perfect. Thank you, Oliver. He grinned and disappeared down the hall. Alone again, Marceline exhaled shakily. Her jaw ached. She'd been grinding her molars unconsciously. The edges of her vision pulsed, darkening subtly. She rose abruptly from her desk, striding toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled endlessly below. Grids of slate rooftops, taxis threading through arteries of streets, distant sirens wailing faintly. From 42 floors up, everything looked ordered, logical, clean. She pressed her palm flat against the cold glass, her breath misting faintly before her. Her reflection shimmered, a ghost on the verge of dissolution. The meeting began precisely at 9 a.m. The conference table gleamed under recessed lights, water carafes and leather-bound notepads arranged with surgical symmetry. Across from her, Kessler's legal team sat poised, crisp suits, sleek laptops, sharp-eyed counsel flipping meticulously through contract printouts. Phelps led with incisive opening remarks. Marcelline, seated at his right hand, nodded at strategic intervals, her hands folded elegantly atop her folio. She spoke with practiced precision when prompted, her voice modulated, her articulation unerring. Yet beneath the surface, an ache began to throb behind her eyes, slow, blooming, nauseating. Words spoken across the table drifted past her ears as though filtered through viscous glass. Clause 17, indemnification stipulations, exposure limits. Phrases tangled indistinctly. She blinked rapidly, her lashes fluttering in staccato rhythm. Stay sharp. Focus. Across the table, Kessler's lead counsel addressed her directly. Ms. Marchand, can you confirm the adjusted ceiling on liability caps post-integration under subsection 17b? A pause, fractional but present. Her brain clawed frantically for the clause in question. The clean corridors of her memory, once labyrinths of instant recall, now felt clouded, fog seeping through the synapses. Numbers and provisions dissolved into static. Her throat tightened, saliva pooled bitterly under her tongue. Don't freeze. She inhaled, shallow and sharp. Of course, she replied smoothly, her tone unwavering despite the rising tremor in her limbs. Subsection 17b sets the cap at $12.5 million contingent on. Her voice fractured imperceptibly on the last word. A crack in crystal, microscopic but seismic. She saw Phelps' gaze flick toward her, quick and assessing. Oliver, seated further down the table, straightened subtly, brow furrowing. The remainder of her sentence landed, precise but brittle. The meeting rolled on. By 11:47 a.m., the contracts were flagged for redrafting and the conference disbanded. Back in her office, Marcelline closed the door quietly. Her breath escaped in a ragged sigh. Her hands, elegant, manicured, adorned with thin gold rings, spasmed faintly as she pressed her palms flat to the surface of her desk. Her heart knocked violently against her ribs. Not fast. Not panic. Heavy. Relentless. Suffocating. Her vision blurred, moisture stinging unbidden in her eyes. No. No. A tight gasp clawed up her throat. Her nails scraped lightly against the wood grain. Without conscious thought, she swept her planner and folio aside, bending at the waist, her forehead pressing hard into her palms. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, jagged, shallow breaths failing to reach deep enough to satisfy her lungs. Not here. Not here. Not here. The mantra throbbed behind her temples. A soft knock startled her upright. Oliver stood hesitantly in her doorway, concern unmasked in his dark eyes. Marcelline? You all right? His tone was tentative, but his gaze sharp. You were off. In there. You need anything? For a heartbeat. The mask slipped. Her lips parted, dry, cracked. Her jaw trembled. And just as swiftly, she recalibrated. Her smile snapped neatly into place. Her spine straightened. Just a slight headache. She lied effortlessly. Didn't sleep much last night. I'll be fine. Oliver lingered a moment longer, uncertainty clouding his features. But eventually, he nodded, retreating. Her shoulders sagged imperceptibly once more. As the door clicked shut, her fingers curled slowly into her palm, nails biting red crescents into flesh. From the corner of her eye, her reflection shimmered again. Precise, impeccable, intact. But inside, something had fissured wider.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more of this content. Watch out for part 2.